I'm going to start out with some housekeeping items. Good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation. Before we get started, let's review a few housekeeping items. Audio is available for this presentation through your computer or by telephone. Please keep your microphone muted to avoid background noise and feedback. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the chat box. We'll have a dedicated time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please contact us through the chat box and we will try to troubleshoot the issue. We will post this presentation on our website for those who are unable to attend today. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yes.
My name is Neil Butt. I'm the project manager for the Volkswagen Settlement Funding Program for New Mexico, administered by the Air Quality Bureau. I would like to briefly discuss the history of the VW settlement, the funding program that resulted, and how funds will be spent during the application period. I will then walk through the application. Afterwards, I will answer questions. Attendance at this workshop will satisfy the requirement for a pre-application meeting, and the deadline for applications is March 15th, 2022 at 5 o'clock. Applications should be sent to me via email. So what did VW do wrong? On January 4th, 2016, the Department of Justice, on behalf of the Environmental Protection Agency, filed a civil complaint in federal court against Volkswagen, alleging that nearly 600,000 diesel engine vehicles had illegal defeat devices installed that impaired their emission control systems and caused emissions to exceed EPA standards, resulting in harmful air pollution. A defeat device is any device that bypasses, defeats, or renders inoperative a required element of the vehicle's emission control system. Volkswagen installed illegal software that allowed the onboard computer to detect when the car is under official testing conditions and to run the exhaust aftertreatment system only under those conditions. During emissions testing, the car's pollution control systems were turned on, curbing toxic emissions at the cost of engine performance. But those emission controls were not fully engaged on the road, allowing cars to spew nitrogen oxides up to 40 times the levels permitted under the Clean Air Act. The complaint further alleged that Volkswagen violated the Clean Air Act by selling, introducing into commerce, or importing into the United States motor vehicles that are designed differently from what Volkswagen had stated in its application for certification to EPA and the California Air Resources Board. The Clean Air Act requires manufacturers to certify to EPA that vehicles will meet federal emission standards, but vehicles with defeat devices cannot be certified. VW Environmental Mitigation Trust Fund. The Mitigation Trust's purpose is to fund a set of eligible mitigation actions that reduce the excess nitric oxide emissions from affected cars sold from 2009 until 2015. The decree provided initial allocation of the mitigation trust funds to all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. On October 2nd, 2017, the executed final trust agreement was filed, which established the trust effective date and subsequent due dates for jurisdictions to become an eligible beneficiary and secure the funds from the initial allocation. New Mexico was allocated nearly $18 million in settlement funds. Allocations were based on the number of affected vehicles registered within the jurisdictions of the beneficiaries. According to a lawsuit filed by New Mexico in 2016, between 4,000 and 10,000 of the affected models were delivered, marketed, and sold in our state. The state will have 10 years to spend 80% of the funding and up to 15 years to spend the full amount. To become a beneficiary, each state or territory had to file a certification form with the trustee. The certification must ensure compliance with all requirements of the trust. Beneficiary status for New Mexico was approved on January 30th, 2018. The state must also appoint a lead agency. For us, NMED is the lead agency. Beneficiary Mitigation Plan. This plan is intended to provide the public with insight into the state's high-level vision for use of the mitigation funds and information about the specific uses for which funding is expected to be requested. The goals of this plan are non-binding, nor does it create any rights in any person to claim an entitlement of any kind. The state may adjust these goals and specific spending plans at its discretion, and if so, shall provide the trustee with updates to the plan. The final beneficiary mitigation plan was posted on the VW website on July 24th, 2018. The beneficiary mitigation plan was revised on July 12th, 2019. Eligible mitigation actions. Any organization that operates a diesel-powered fleet within New Mexico may apply for funding under this program. Applicants must review the eligible mitigation actions found in Appendix D-2 of the State Mitigation Trust Agreement. Appendix D-2 specifies the maximum funding allowed for each eligible mitigation action. The eligible mitigation actions for this application period consist of the following. Class 4, 5, 6, and 7 local freight trucks, including commercial trucks used to deliver cargo and freight, for example, courier services, delivery trucks, box trucks, waste haulers, dump trucks, and concrete mixers, with a gross vehicle weight rating ranging from 14,001 pounds to 33,000 pounds. Also, Class 8 local freight trucks and drayage trucks with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 33,000 pounds, used for port drayage and/or freight and cargo delivery, including waste haulers, dump trucks, and concrete mixers. Drayage trucks haul cargo to and from ports and intermodal rail yards. Also, Class 4 through 8 school buses, shuttle buses, and transit buses with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 14,001 pounds, used for transporting people. And freight switcher locomotives, which move rail cars around a rail yard as compared to a line haul engine that moves freight long distances. Round 3 funding, which we're in now, has a special provision for hydrogen fuel cells. So approximately $7.3 million from the VW Settlement Fund has been designated for diesel emission reduction projects throughout New Mexico, with a preference for hydrogen fuel cell engine and vehicle replacement, including the fueling infrastructure to support these vehicles. Class 8 local freight trucks and port drayage trucks, Class 4 through 8 school buses, shuttle buses, and transit buses, freight switcher locomotives, and Class 4 through 7 local freight trucks may be repowered with any new diesel or alternate fueled engine or all electric engine, or may be replaced with any new diesel or alternate fueled or all electric vehicle. In this instance, repower means to replace an existing engine with a newer, cleaner engine or a power source that is certified by EPA and, if applicable, California Air Resources Board to meet a more stringent set of engine emission standards. Alternate fueled means an engine or vehicle or piece of equipment that is powered by an engine, which uses a fuel different from or in addition to gasoline fuel or diesel fuel. For example, CNG, propane, or diesel electric hybrid. All electric means powered exclusively by electricity provided by a battery, fuel cell, or the grid. General limitations and conditions. Project area must be physically located in New Mexico. The vehicle replacement or engine replacement project must include the scrapping of the old vehicle or old engine. In this instance, scrapped means to render inoperable and available for recycle by cutting a 3-inch hole in the engine block and disabling the chassis by cutting the vehicle's frame rails completely in half. Vehicles that are being replaced or repowered must be operational and have a valid state registration. There will be an exception for off-road vehicles, which we can discuss later. New vehicles must be of the same class and perform the same duties as the vehicles being replaced. Funding recipients must comply with all requirements in the implementation of the project. Scoring criteria. Special consideration will be given to hydrogen fuel cell projects, but all applications will be scored based on the following criteria: total lifetime nitrogen oxide or NOx emissions reductions for the entire project, cost effectiveness, cost share, sensitive populations located within the project area to include minority, poverty, schools, daycare, hospital, medical facilities, and elderly. Also air quality impacts, specifically for ozone, high impact areas, population, and alternative fuel type to include CNG, LNG, propane, electric, and hydrogen. So here's what the application looks like. First part is Part A, organizational information, and it's somewhat self-explanatory. We ask you to provide your project title, the number of vehicles you plan on replacing, the amount of funding you intend to request, your total estimated project cost, your organization name, your responsible official, and what that means is the person responsible for the funding. This will be the person with signatory authority and oversight for the project. Also, you'll need to know the contact person, their title, phone, and email, your organization type, and your fleet address. Part B, project category. Here we would like you to talk about your project area, provide a summary of the proposed project area, the project type, select the project type for this application.
Exactly.
We'd also like to know the number of years the vehicle will remain in your fleet.
Figure this out.
Project category Part B continued.
Know nothing about them.
I know.
But
I'm
mine,
having some feedback. If you can mute your line, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. NOx reductions from the project. We'd like you to provide the total lifetime NOx emission reductions for the entire project in tons. The quantity of NOx reduced is based on the years of early retirement of the vehicle being replaced and not the anticipated lifetime of your new vehicle. Cost effectiveness. The dollars per ton of NOx emissions reduced. This equals the total project cost divided by the total tons of NOx emissions reduced. Cost share. This will be your percentage of the total project costs that the applicant is planning on contributing to the project. And a summary. Provide a detailed summary detailing the source of the emission, production data used, and the calculated cost effectiveness. So here for your on-road applications, estimated emissions shall be calculated using the Argonne National Laboratories Heavy Duty Vehicle Emissions Calculator. For non-road applications, you'll use EPA's diesel emissions quantifier. And we will provide a live demonstration of these tools at the end of this presentation. Part B, sensitive populations. Select the sensitive populations located within your project area. And here I'll have checkboxes for elderly, hospitals, medical facilities, schools, daycare. Then we ask you to provide the percent minority, and the percent poverty levels within your project area. The minority percentage is determined by the value listed in the EJ Screen ACS Summary Report, subheading Summary of ACS Estimates Population. Your population percentage is determined by using the values listed in the EJ Screen ACS Summary Report, subheading Households by Household Income. The percentage is calculated by adding those earning less than $15,000 per year and those earning $15,000 to $25,000 per year. We ask that you provide a detailed description of the project area as it relates to the sensitive populations, percent minority, and percent below poverty levels. Use the Environmental Protection Agency's EJ Screen Environmental Justice Screening and Mapping tool as the data source for this section. And we ask that you provide a copy of the EJ Screen ACS report, including whether the data provided is for a tract, census, city, county, or state. We will demonstrate how to use EJ Screen at the end of this presentation. Air quality impacts attainment status for ozone. Here, you'll check the box for non-attainment for ozone only if you have a project that's in Doña Ana County, or if you have an area with an ozone design value greater than or equal to 95% of the national ambient air quality standard for ozone. And at this time, those counties include Lee, Eddy, Chaves, Doña Ana, San Juan, Rio Arriba, Sandoval, Bernalillo, and Valencia. And we ask you to provide a summary on the project area as it applies to the ozone standard. Air quality impacts, high impact areas. Is the project located in an area that is disproportionately affected by exposure to diesel fueled vehicles? Here you'll check all that apply. If your project's near an airport, distribution center, fleet yard, interstate highway, multimodal center, port to include port of entry, bus terminal, rail terminal, truck stop, U.S. highway, or other, for example, a New Mexico highway. We ask that you provide a detailed summary that describes what sources of diesel emissions are located within your project area and how they're impacting the project area, including the proximity of the sources in the project area. Air quality impacts, high impact areas continued. We'd like you to provide an estimate of the population in your project area, provide a brief summary of for the population as it relates to the project area. If you're going to use an alternative fuel type for your proposed vehicle replacement, check whether it's CNG, LNG, propane, electric, or hydrogen. We'd also like to know your ability to deploy your project in a timely manner. Please include the project's timeline, including estimated time of delivery for replacement vehicles, engine replacements, equipment, and associated equipment installation time. Are additional fueling infrastructure developments or improvements needed for your project? Also, please provide a detailed summary of the applicant's purchasing procedures, ensuring that all vendors will be selected in accordance with state public contracting and procurement regulations as applicable. So now I would like to give a live demonstration of the emissions calculators and EJ Screen. Let me stop sharing, and my colleague Bob Spillers will show you how to use the calculator, and then I'll show you how to use EJ Screen. And we'll take questions during these demonstrations, and then I have a wrap-up slide, and then we have as much time as you want for all your detailed questions.
Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, thank you for participating in this meeting. I just want to give a demonstration for the emission calculating tools. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that? Neil?
Yes, I can see it. Good.
Okay, this is the home screen that once you click on the links that are located in the application, this is the Argonne tool developed specifically for the Volkswagen settlement funding. This is the home page that you'll land on. And so to get started, you click on get started. So you can have a previously saved project if you already have a project that you've already entered in here. And I do not have any saved projects right now. So you would click on save the project, then you're going to give the project the name, and we'll name it today. You're going to select a project type, and your project type, since this is the mitigation funding with scrappage, because you'll all be required to scrap your vehicle that you're replacing, you'll select environmental mitigation with scrappage. That gives you a few other choices, but what we're using right now is we're going to use the vehicle with scrappage. You're going to select your state. Then you're going to go on to your vehicle options. We'll go ahead and we'll do a school bus this time. Number of vehicles, we're just going to select one. Model year of scrap vehicle, we're going to go with 2009 because I think that's the upper limit. Actually, I think the upper limit for school buses is maybe 2011, but we'll go ahead and go with 2009. Estimated years, early retirement. Since I selected school buses, that's kind of tricky. We'll say that this is a spare school bus, and we'll go ahead and leave it at 5 years for early retirement. Estimated lifetime of a new vehicle, I believe it for a school bus. I believe it's their route buses for 12 years. Excuse me. Annual miles for scrap vehicles. I do not know exactly how many miles a school bus runs on its route yearly, so we're going to go ahead and leave 15,000. Annual miles of the new vehicle, it should be the same as the old vehicle. Since we're going to go ahead and select probably a natural gas engine. I don't know if they actually make a natural gas school bus. I know that they make propane. And we're going to go ahead and select the use diesel and use multiplier. So our funding, the funding requested, depending on, since it's a school bus, it's a government agency, and the funding requesting for the Volkswagen settlement will be 100. We can use 100%, and we're going to estimate the cost of a new natural gas school bus, probably, we'll say $120,000. As I stated earlier, I do not have any basis for these numbers. This is just an estimate. And we don't need to move it and change any of this. We'll just use North American natural gas. And that's all the inputs that we need to put in for our on-road vehicle use for this. So then we'll hit calculate results. Give it a moment. And here's the results that we receive from our inputs. What we're interested in, it gives us extra information that we don't really need. What we're interested in is the NOx per pound. Keep in mind that this is NOx per pound, and in the application, it requires NOx per ton. So you'll just take, since it's a natural gas vehicle, you just take the NOx found under natural gas and divide it by 2,000, and that'll give you your tons per year for a school bus. And your cost effectiveness will be the $175 NOx per pound. And so to export the results, we just hit export. And it'll populate a workbook for you. And this is the same illustration that we had in the beginning. It has all our inputs and then it has all our emissions. So you'll just save this workbook and you'll submit this along with your application to Neil. And basically that's all it is for this. Do we have any questions? Okay.
I see
So we're gonna
Meg
go on to.
Sandquist has
Um,
her hand up. Meg, would you like to go
Okay.
ahead and ask a question? Well, I can see that Meg looks like she's unmuted, but I cannot hear her.
Okay, we can go back to her question.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, good, good. Okay, sorry. I'm wondering how to use the HDVEC with a first generation natural gas vehicle. I know you require that we use this calculator, but it doesn't have an option for fuel type.
For a natural gas vehicle,
Right, replacing a first generation natural gas vehicle.
you're replacing a natural gas vehicle with a natural gas vehicle. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
It doesn't ask for that. It doesn't provide that option.
Right.
Um,
Would you prefer we
I
use a
believe
different calculator or?
you can probably use the diesel emission quantifier, but since you're replacing a natural gas vehicle with a natural gas vehicle, your NOx emissions will probably be relatively low. You'll be replacing a natural gas vehicle probably with a low NOx vehicle is what you're talking about, right?
Right. So it's actually a first generation, so it's 2.0 to 0.2. So it does there is a fair bit of emission reduction, but obviously not in the same level as diesel, but
Yeah. Neil?
I would have to look into it. My initial response is that we're trying to get diesels off the road. And I don't know if we replace a
natural gas.
natural gas with a natural gas. It's possible, but without me looking into it further, my initial thought would be we're trying to get NOx emissions out
Right.
of the airshed to compensate for the excess emissions that VW put there illegally. And so I can't say
You're
that
saying
it's not
it might
possible.
not, okay, but it might not be ranked favorably.
And I couldn't say about that either. I'd have to think about it. I'm more used to taking diesels off the road and putting something cleaner back on the road. But
Okay.
I can't tell you the answer right now. I can think about it and
Okay.
get back to you maybe.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My thought on this is that if you are considering it and you want to get your project in before the deadline, would probably, and I'm not trying to override any of Neil's comments or anything like that, would probably you'd have to use the diesel emission quantifier to see exactly to be able to provide that type of data, because this is just for diesel emissions.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? With that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the diesel emission quantifier. You'll need to create
Bob,
a user. Yes.
we had another hand go up. Israel, did you have a question? Israel Martins?
Yes, I did. And this is not directly related to the diesel emission quantifier, but I did want to, in this sense, it seems to be only referring to the on-road section. Do you happen to know if there are terminal tractors specifically would be regarded as on-road or off-road, and if one or both or neither would qualify for the program?
Neil?
I'll have to think about that and I'll either give you an answer at the end or you can email me the question and I can give you a definitive answer.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, there's also a chat function for everyone. Down in your bottom right-hand corner, you should see a chat function. So you can enter your questions in there. So something that may be a little bit more detailed of a question that might be easier for us to actually read and chew on that way to get you an answer. So that's also an option.
Any other questions?
No, it looks like you're good to go, Bob.
Okay, so for the diesel emission quantifier, you'll have to create a user account, and it's very simple. Just click on create a user account. Can you see the diesel emission quantifier, the create user account? So you just fill out this information here and then you register it, and they'll provide you with an account. Your login will be your email address. Then you'll have your own personal password. And it also doesn't require you to change your password regularly. I've had the same password for, I don't know, I think since 2008, I believe. So you're going to want to create a project. You'll give that project a name, and the name will be day. And then it asks for the total project cost. Since this is for the VW settlement funding, the only non-road applications are airport support ground equipment and freight switchers. So we're going to go ahead and go with freight switchers. I do not know how much a freight switcher costs. So any inputs that I'm using are just a best guess. And so for the project, it's also limited for freight switchers. I think you can, for the Volkswagen funding, you can only go from a diesel freight switcher to an electric freight switcher. So I'm going to estimate that it's going to be like $4 million. It could be a lot less than that. I don't know. It could be more. I know electric vehicles seem to be extremely expensive. So you just save your project. You can also go back through and edit your project. If you need to, you just click on edit and just go back and change the inputs here. So then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add a vehicle or engine group. Click on it. So since we're limited to switch locomotives, we'll click on switch locomotive. Give it a group name. Type locomotive. Target fleet is going to be a switch locomotive. It gives you a few options, but we're limited to the switch locomotive. The sector, we're going to call it freight, because we're going to assume that it's in multimodal yard for a rail yard. And they don't offer a rail yard. Quantity will be 1. Baseline for the engine model year. These things could run forever, it's my understanding. So we're just going to go ahead and select 1980. Or you can select the tier. The tier is the emission standard set by EPA. So you have some that don't have any controls at all. And as you go up through the years, tier 0 is just right above uncontrolled, and tier 4 has the most stringent emission standard set by EPA. So we're going to go with tier 0. You can select one or the other. Annual gallons of fuel used. There again, I have no idea. I'm just estimating 100,000 gallons a year. Annual hours. These are just guesses. I mean, these things could probably actually run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for all I know. Horsepower, the original horsepower, I'm just going to assume 300 horsepower. Upgrade year will be the year that you're upgrading your project to. So we're going to go ahead and select 2022. Remaining baseline or engine life. Since they can go forever, we're going to go ahead and select 10 years, estimating that it'll stay in service for 10 years. So you're going to save this group. And there again, here's your group. You can edit it. You can copy it and add it to another group, but you can go ahead and, if you need to edit it, say it has, you want to change the remaining life to 5 years or whatever. You can change any of this stuff. You can go back and edit it. Just click edit and it opens it back up and you can make your changes. And you just save it again. So what you're going to want to do is next is you're going to want to add an upgrade to it. You notice here in this table here, we don't have any upgrades that have been applied. So you'll click add upgrade. So this will be locomotive replacement. We're not going to replace the engine. We're going to replace the whole thing. And here, you're going to select what the project is, what the upgrade is. Since it's a VW settlement, I believe that it's only for electric upgrades. Cost per unit, we said it was $4 million. We won't have any labor costs. It's a replacement. So when you start looking at your percent emissions reduced, since it's electric, you're going to have 100% of all the emissions reduced. So then you're going to save your upgrade. And there again, if you need to make any changes, you can edit it or you can add an upgrade if for whatever reason there's something else you want to add to it. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to quantify the project emissions. So you just hit quantify project emissions. And here are your emission results. So what we're looking for is lifetime results in short tons, 2,000 pounds. The amount reduced after upgrades for this particular project would be 13.786 tons of NOx reduced over the lifetime of the vehicle. And your total cost effectiveness is going to be $290,148. So this is the information that you're going to want to submit along with your application. So you scroll down where it says downloading spreadsheets. Just click spreadsheet. And it'll provide you with a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's a little odd because it just continues on through numerous columns. But this is what you'll provide Neil along in your application. And that's it. It's relatively simple. The first time may be a little awkward, but once you get used to it, or you go through it once, you guys will probably only use it once. And that's the end of my demonstration. Does anybody have any questions? Either I did a really good job or I confused you guys, but if you think of anything, you can contact Neil as you're entering your information into your personal project information into either of the emission tools. You can contact Neil, and if he has any questions about it, he'll forward it on to me, and I can provide you with any clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, I'm going to run through the EJ screen. I can figure out how to. Okay. Can you see that all right? Bob, is that showing up all right?
That looks good now.
Okay, thanks. So this is the EJ screen, Environmental Justice Screening and Mapping Tool. And you'll go here where it says launch the EJ screen tool, and this hyperlink will take you there. And it should generate a map. And the EJ screen can provide a lot of data that we won't need, and you can explore it on your own. Lots and lots of stuff is packed into here. For our particular purposes, what we'd like to know about is the minority population, the poverty population, and the general population. And so I'll run through a couple of hypotheticals for you. So let's say your project is replacing a piece of equipment at the sun port. So you type in Albuquerque sun port. And it should jump to the airport, which it did. And in a case like this, it's going to be a limited distribution for your vehicle. It's probably not going to leave the grounds of the airport. So what we'll do is make our own customized area by dropping a pin. So go up here to reports, and you have a little option here. It says drop a pin. And it'll, wherever your cursor engages, that's where the pin will go. So I'll take it right here in the center of the airport. And that should give you a pop-up screen for what kind of report you want. Excuse me. So what I do is I give it a name, because if you're going to be running a lot of different scenarios, you want to keep them straight. And so if you give them a name, it'll make it a lot easier. Since this is a localized project, you can put a 5-mile buffer around the airport to include the population in that area. And then there's a number of reports here that are offered by EPA. CDC report, census report, ACS report, standard report, or exploring other data. And what we'd like to have you run and include with your application is this one here. It says get 2015 to 2019 ACS report. And then it'll load. And here's what the report looks like. So your minority population's right here, 63%. The population in that 5-mile radius is 142,150. Those values will be entered into your application. Plus, we ask that you send this PDF along with your application. And then percent living in poverty, you scroll down here where it says households by household income. And you add up those living on less than $15,000 a year, which is 20%. And those living on $15,000 to $25,000 a year, which is 15. So 35% are living in poverty. So let's take another hypothetical. Let's say you want to replace a transit bus in Albuquerque. So in this case, the bus is probably going to have a route that covers a large part of Albuquerque. So let's enter the entire city. And since we're going to do the whole city, you won't drop a pin because it's not a localized area. It's going to be the city limits. So you come over here and say select city and put your cursor in whatever city your project is found in. And the map will populate. That's the city limits of Albuquerque. And whatever's inside that green shaded area is going to encompass the population that your project could potentially affect. So come up here and name it something so you don't get confused. Run your 15 to 19 ACS report. Let it load. And here it is. So within the city limits, your population that you'll enter is 553,845 persons. Minority is 61%. Then poverty, those earning less than 15,000 is 13%. Those earning 15 to 25,000 is 11. So that's 24% are living in poverty. Questions? All right. Hearing none, I'll attempt to wrap up and then we'll have an extended period for specific questions. Okay. Scoring, selection, and funding. Applications are due before 5 p.m. on March 15th, 2022. Submit them electronically to me at neil.butt@state.nm.us. That's the preferable method. If it's impossible for you to do it that way, you could submit a hard application to our main office in Santa Fe, but it'd make it much more easier and more efficient if you could submit them electronically. NMED scoring. Once we receive your application, we plan on scoring them internally from March 15th through the end of May 2022. NMED will conduct a comprehensive review of the applications and supporting documentation that shall include the VW vehicle information sheet, cost information, for example, price quotes from vendors, and an EJ screen report. NMED will not be responsible for any application that is rejected due to incomplete or inaccurate information. All complete applications will be evaluated and scored by a panel of air quality experts using the criteria described earlier. Qualifying applications will be sent to the VW Trust Steering Committee for final selection. The VW Steering Committee will select candidates for awards by the end of June of this year. Then project agreements will be drafted and executed for successful applicants from July through September. Reimbursement is made by the trustee after completion of a project. Once you complete your project, you will need to submit some paperwork to get your reimbursement from the trustee who manages the funds. The program only allows certain eligible mitigation actions outlined in Appendix D-2. Allowable projects and cost share requirements are outlined in Appendix D-2 and the application. And here's my contact information. And myself and my supervisor, Mike Baca, and my colleague, Bob Spillers, are available to answer questions if possible. And if not, we will either take the information now and get back to you, or you can email us and I'll give you a definitive answer. Mr. Spillers.
Something I forgot on the A-Fleet tool was, since we have to convert it from pounds to tons, we have to convert the cost effectiveness appropriately also. Do you see my spreadsheet? So what we have to do is, for the lifetime benefits, we have to convert the NOx emissions from pounds to tons. So we're going to take 685.96 and divide it by 2,000. And that's going to give us our cost per ton. I mean, our tons. So we're going to end up with 0.34 298 tons of emissions reductions for a school bus project. This is pretty typical for school buses. It's taking the average route and everything. It's taking it's already has all the information built into the program. And it's looking at how much a school bus actually travels throughout the school year. So it's dollars per ton for cost effectiveness. And Neil or Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So you're going to take the dollars. Our project was $130,000, if I remember correctly. And then you're going to divide that by the 0.34298. And that's going to give us our cost effectiveness. Oh, that didn't work. So we're going to take the, can you see the calculator? Like I said, it's cost per ton. You can divide that by dollars per ton. Oh, I see what happened there. You're going to divide that by the tons.
Did I leave what I wrote down, or did I take it with me? And
So your cost effectiveness for this project is going to be $379,030 per ton. For the cost effectiveness for this project. Still didn't quite work out right. So if you have any questions on calculating that out, you can go ahead and contact Neil or myself and we'll walk you through this again. Does anybody have any questions on this? Like I said, we have to, since we're converting it into tons, we have to convert it into dollars per ton. So it's going to be the total project cost divided by the tons of the project, emissions, the emission reductions, the benefits.
Okay, well, while I'm waiting for someone else to come up with another question, the question about yard tractors, what I've been generally telling people is that if your particular project is not explicitly spelled out in our application or in Appendix D-2, then we're probably not going to be able to do it this round. So I've had questions about street sweepers and water trucks, vacuum trucks, material handlers, things like that. And while those could be perfectly good projects and effective projects, in this round, we didn't make allowances inside our application for those specific types of projects. So what we're encouraging is ones that fall within the eligible mitigation actions that I mentioned before. So if it strays from that, you can ask me or email me and I can give you a definitive answer. But generally, if it's not a project or a type of vehicle that you find within our application or within Appendix D-2, then it's unlikely we're going to be able to do it this round. And if it doesn't look like there's going to be much left over for a fourth round, but if there is, maybe then. But for this round, we're going to try and keep it to the ones I mentioned before: freight trucks, drayage trucks, buses, and freight switcher locomotives. If that helps at all, clear that up. I guess it must have been perfect, Bob. Getting very few questions here. Are you seeing anything, Mike?
No, I'm not seeing anybody with any questions at this time.
There's somebody.
I just wanted
Can't
to
see.
say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to thank Bob for going over that calculator, because that can be the most painful part of a application, and appreciate him doing that.
Yeah. I guess I was having stage fright getting the spreadsheet to work. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it was
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, you just need to calculate, change the pounds into tons, and then it's dollars per ton. So you'll divide the project cost by the tons, and that it, in some cases, it comes out with a very large number. And, you know, for certain projects like a school bus, it's not uncommon for it to have a large number. If you're going from something possibly electric to from diesel to electric, you may have a lower cost per ton. It's cost effectiveness. But anyway, if anybody has any issues or problems with it, like I said earlier, you can contact Neil, and if he doesn't have your answer, he'll pass it on to me, and I'm more than willing to sit down with any of you to go over either one of the tools and try and answer any of your questions to the best of my ability. I've used both tools quite a bit. I've been doing diesel projects, grant projects since for quite a few years, since 2008, I believe. So I'm not an expert at it, but I do have quite a bit of experience using both tools.
Don't be shy. Now's the perfect time. I got all three of us sitting here.
This is Meg again. I guess I do have one other question, which is how um, how heavily do you rank the cost share amount? Like how does how I know that does factor into the scoring of each proposal, but what is its relative importance? Are you able to share that?
I don't remember the points offhand. I know that it's a certain number of points per percentage points that you chip in. I couldn't say how heavily it weighs in. I would say, whatever your operations plan on doing, you can submit that. I don't remember offhand how heavy it is.
would you ever come back to a project and suggest that they, offer perhaps a lower award amount than was initially requested? Is that something that might happen?
That probably won't happen in the initial round, because what happens is we'll be taking all the applications and then we'll have our expert air quality team evaluate them and score them. And then we provide recommendations to the steering committee, and they take our recommendations and they look at all the other applications and they determine in their mind which ones they think are the best projects. And they are the ones who determine the funding amounts. And so for the last round, there's great interest shown in the electric vehicle charging stations. And so there wasn't as much money to go around as there is for vehicle replacement projects like there is for this round.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to make some decisions about which ones were most effective at reducing the NOx, excess NOx in the air shed, and which ones would have more impact in their opinion. And so in that case, they spread it around and decided which projects were fully funded, which projects only got a quarter of what they asked for.
Mm-hmm.
But in this round, I don't think that it would be necessarily going back to the drawing board. I would say you put in your best application you possibly can and what you can realistically do,
Mm-hmm.
realistic cost estimates, realistic amounts that your agency is able to put in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can read the D-2 appendix and then read the application, and it'll give you guidelines for the funding percentages that are for federal agencies, state agencies,
Mm-hmm.
and private agencies. And then do the best you can and submit it. And like Bob mentioned, between now and the 15th, if there's specific questions or problems you're running into, he and I can work through those. And then after that, there probably won't be any revisions. We'll score them and submit our recommendations, and then the steering committee will decide what they think, whether there's a ton of applications, like for the chargers, that probably was 30 or 40 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be spread around to a lot of people. This round, there may be less than that because the projects are much more expensive to put in on the ground, like in the tens or hundreds or millions. So we don't expect that kind of flurry of applications like we did for chargers. So there may be more than enough to satisfy everybody, but that'll be up to the trustee, myself and Bob and my supervisor and whoever else is going to be on the team. We don't make any recommendations about the financial funding. That all the financials are handled by the steering committee, and also they make the final decision. So it gives extra layers of objectivity. We have a standardized scoring protocol,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a certain standardized set of points for every part of the application, and then we boil all that down to a score and then give our recommendations. And then when it goes to the steering committee, then they can also be objective and look at the state, look at what's happening in the state, look at the air sheds, and then make their own determinations and take into account our recommendations. But they can overrule us, whatever they think. They take a lot of factors into consideration also. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And this is Bob again. Cost effectiveness is only one part of the application. I don't know if we're weighing any one thing more than the other. I believe that we've tried to spread it out so that everything is taken into consideration. If you question your cost effectiveness, you can go back into the tool and you can adjust. There's the only thing that you can really adjust on that is, I don't know what type of project it is or anything like that, is you just enter your vehicle information and then you look at your funding options and you can adjust your funding request You know, if you're a state entity, a government entity, you know, you're allowed 100%. So that's going to have an effect on the project as you're requesting 100% of the project. Like the school bus, I put down like $120,000 for a school bus. If it's a private entity, I believe it's the funding request is 25% of the project, and that's going to have an effect on it. You know, if it was $100,000 project, or if it's a $400,000 project, you can only request $100,000. You can go back into the tool and experiment with it and see how, if you're worried about the cost effectiveness, you can experiment with, you know, well, okay, well, instead of $100,000, what if we request $80,000 and see what your data comes out like? You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep, I do. Thank you.
And if you have any questions or anything like that, or issues, you know, filling out the application, you know, you can contact us and we'll take time and help you out. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Neil or Mike, but if we work with somebody specifically and go in and go back and change numbers, theoretically, we would have to do it with everybody. So once your application is submitted, when the application that we receive by the 15th, that's pretty much it. We can't, you know, we can't step in and make any adjustments, you know, to change anything. You know, I can recommend you playing with the tool and see what your data comes out like. But that's really about all we can do. Do you have anything to add on to that, Mike or Neil? Or just tell me I'm wrong? I guess not. Like I said, if you guys have any questions about using the tool, you know, you can contact us. We have another question.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I work for a government entity, fleet manager over here at San Juan County, and I heard you say that government entities can apply for 100% of the funding. Did I hear correctly that there's a cap at $100,000 though? Is that correct?
There's
Oh.
no cap. The limitations are spelled out in the D-2, and that's the different types of vehicles and the different agencies that are applying for them, private or government, and things like that. But there's no cap to what your project's going to be. It's just a matter of your agency. So say you want to buy, 10 garbage trucks, and it's going to cost you, $10 million. Then you ask for 10 million, of course, you're not going to get that because we only have, that limited amount that I mentioned in the beginning, but there's not a specific cap to what you can ask for, but you see the total pot we have to pass out amongst everybody on this call, and everybody else is going to submit an application. So it's not going to be a crazy amount, but we don't say you're limited to what you can ask for. You can ask for whatever you think the realistic amount is. And then what also I was going to say is that these projects, you're going to submit the application, and it has to be the strongest application that you can submit. But then you have to be realistic. You need to purchase these vehicles with your own money. So you put in the application, assuming we award it to you, and you get your award letter and your project agreement executed. And then you don't start your project until you get an executed project agreement and an award letter saying that you can proceed. I'll tell you can proceed. I'll give you an email. Then you're gonna have to buy these vehicles. So if it's 100,000, 10,000, a million, whatever it is you're gonna spend, you have to spend that out of your own funding source. Buy the vehicle, have it delivered, scrap your old vehicle so it's unusable and can be recycled. Then you submit all the paperwork and all the proof, pictures, receipts, invoices, stuff like that, showing how much you actually spent and what was delivered and photographic evidence. Then I put all that into a report that I submit to the trustee, and then they review it for 60 days, I think. And then they'll wire whatever your award was to your bank account. So you want to be realistic because it's going to be your funding source that's going to be paying for this vehicle. So you can't ask for $10 million worth of buses when you have no intention or ability to actually buy $10 million worth of buses. But if you actually have a project that your agency can develop and purchase and get on the ground and be able to front that money to get this project going and then have enough slack in your financials so that you can wait for the trustee to reimburse you, then that's what can happen. So it needs to be a realistic idea and a realistic estimate of what it's really going to cost and whether you can actually follow through with the project, and how much time you think it would actually take. So hopefully that was, I know that rambled a little bit, hopefully it was somewhat clear.
Thank you. That was very clear. Appreciate your feedback. I do have one more question. Earlier you mentioned in this round, I could have swore you said something about material handlers not being eligible, and possibly round 4, if there was any funding available, that they would become available. But I thought I read in the appendix where, I think it was on page 7, there was a section for forklifts and material handlers. So I just wanted to clarify, are the forklifts off the table for this round, or is that something that we could apply for?
If it's in Appendix D-2 and you can point me to that when you either email me or when it comes time, you're getting close for the application, then yes, it would be eligible. Like I said, I've got questions about material handlers and those other things, vacuum trucks, water trucks, sweepers, ambulances, things like that. And conceptually, those are not disallowed, but for this particular round of funding and in this state and this agency, we're trying to stay within the 4 corners of that application and for D2. So, and I haven't memorized it, I've read it probably 30 or 40 times, but if it says it's in the D2, that's a forklift, then if you can send me an email and do sketch out your scope of work and what you're planning on doing, then I can give you some more definitive feedback before you actually submit your application. And that goes for everyone too. If you have and I'm going to try and answer these other questions if you'll email me, but if you have a question like natural gas, I have a large question in my mind about that. So if you email me, I'll research it. And if you can point me to somewhere either in my application or in the D2 where it says that that's good, then that'd be great. Yard tractors also, if you can point me to where it looks like it's within the 4 corners of that D2 or my application, then that'd be good too. So hopefully that was somewhat clear.
Thank you for your answer. I appreciate it.
And this is Bob again. I just want to reiterate that we're not the ones that determine how much funding goes to state, goes to government projects, and how much funding goes to the percentages that go to private projects. That was all determined when they in the trust document, and that can all be found in the D2.
That's correct. Yeah, a close reading of the D2 would be very beneficial to you because there's percentages, lots of percentages, which I can't possibly remember all of them. And there's engine model years, which I can't remember all of them. And it's all laid out pretty detailed in the D2. So you'll know what kind of percentages you're looking at and the vehicle that you're trying to get rid of, what model year it is, and the engine model year, and what you're going to replace it with, things like that. So it's all spelled out pretty well in the D2 and also somewhat in the application.
So I guess the question was yard vehicles. Is that what it was, Neil?
Yard trucks, yard tractors,
Yeah.
the vehicles that move around, what, piggyback semi trailers? Is the person still on the line who had the yard tractor question?
I believe handling equipment is specific to port cargo handling vehicles. Let me share my screen. Can you see that? So this is number 8, forklifts and port cargo handling equipment. So it's specific to ports. So that would be ocean going ports, and whatever else we're considering a port, here in New Mexico. And Neil can probably answer that one a little bit better. So it has to be specific to a port. A yard truck or something like that. It's kind of vague just when you're asking in that context.
Thanks, Bob. So that makes it more clear in my mind what I was trying to say, and I couldn't quite get a handle on it. So the entire universe is the D2. So that's all that will ever be allowed is inside the D2. And that's the complete universe of projects under VW. But then for this particular round, we're going to narrow down the funnel of your universe. So like in the entire universe, we have vehicle chargers, electric vehicle charging stations, and like Bob said, the forklifts and port cargo equipment. But for this one, we're narrowing it down to those that I was mentioning before that are a subset of D2. Within D2, there's a subset. There's one subset, and I don't remember which number it is, like Bob was showing you, that's eligible mitigation number 8 was
Yes.
forklifts. And I don't remember which number it is, but class 4 through 7 local freight trucks is one EMA, one eligible mitigation action. Class 8 local freight trucks and drayage trucks is one of those eligible mitigation actions. 4 through 8 school, shuttle, and transit buses is one, and then freight switchers is one. So there will be more possibilities in the D2 than we're allowing for this round of funding. So that's your total universe, and then we're going to narrow down, telescope down to just these 4 that I mentioned in the presentation. Those freight trucks, drayage trucks, buses, and freight switchers. So there won't be any chargers, as an example. They're mentioned in D2, and they're spelled out, but that's not going to be in this round. And I'll have to read again about the forklifts and port equipment, but my initial thought is no, because this round's a subset of the entire D2. But email me, any of you have questions like that, email me your scope and your ideas and your plans, and I can give you a definitive answer in enough time. I can turn around quickly and get in enough time for you to tailor your application so that it won't be rejected for ineligibility. Any other questions? I see Go still has your hand up. I don't know if that's an artifact or not.
You know, I asked my question a while ago and I didn't think I could take my hand down. Let me see if, there we go.
Donald has a question.
So I'm sorry, I might have missed something. So electric charging stations are not in this round, but what about compressed natural gas stations?
So, yeah, I don't know if I made that clear before. So if you want a fueling station, either hydrogen or electric car, something like that, that's open to the general public or as a commercial enterprise, that's not for this round. The only infrastructure that's going to be allowed for this round is, say you're going to replace a diesel transit bus with an electric bus. Well, of course, you're going to need the charger to plug that bus into. So that's going to be covered under your ask. But as far as something that's generally available, like putting up a fast charging station or a level 2 charging station or handing out hydrogen to the general public or doing a propane distribution type network, that's not going to be allowed. Only whatever vehicle that you are going to replace, whatever it takes to make that vehicle functional. So if it's, like, say it's an electric bus, you're going to need to have that charger because they're dedicated to that one vehicle, a special dedicated charger to that vehicle. Or possibly if you're going to have a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, if you have a dedicated hydrogen supply just for that vehicle, that'd be allowed. So, whatever vehicle you're replacing, if you have infrastructure that's needed for that dedicated to that vehicle, that's fine. But a general open air commercial enterprise, no.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, I appreciate your time. And if you have a specific question, please email me. My intention is to place this recording on the website so that if I glossed over something and you want to review it, you can go back and look at it. Also, I'll put my slide deck on there that has my contact information if you don't already have it and the other details of the program. Then if you were here today, if you attended today, that constitutes a pre-application meeting. For the first round of funding, I was able to sit across a conference table and talk with each applicant. But during Corona, of course, that's not possible. So we have to meet virtually. And so we came up with this idea. So if you were here today, you can check off that box. If you or one of your clients was not here today, you can direct them to our website and have them review it between now and the 15th. So if they have any questions, they can get them to me so we can address them before the deadline. I can't think of anything else. I appreciate your time and send me questions and let anybody know that you're working with, that it's closing soon and they can watch this presentation and they can get an application in under the wire. Anything
This is
else?
Bob again. I just want to thank everybody for participating also. Like I said, I keep expressing, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us. We're here to help you if you get your application in on time, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Bob.